Why bad habits don't need telling off, they need replacing. Right? How many of those unwanted habits have you got in your life, right, that have not been hanging around for days or weeks, maybe for decades? Just think about that, right? Decades of unwanted habits, such as that unhealthy snacking habit that you promise yourself tomorrow will be different, only to find yourself with a mouthful of crisps the very next day, or the week later, or the month later, or the year later. All of these things just stick around in the background. And here's the thing that I've learned with helping hundreds of thousands of people now make a behemoth of a change in their relationship with alcohol, and all the many behavioural change that spin out of that. There's a couple of things that we need to know. We need to get into the science of the habit loop. We need to understand how the habit loop works. Then we can decode it. Then we can get ninja-like with our skills when it comes to change, because we are but a bundle of habits in many ways. So much of what we do just runs at a subconscious level below the radar. And here's the thing with most of our habits. They just sort of appear. We don't really choose them. They just suddenly form because all the structure of the habit loop, which I'll show you in a second, come together, and then boom, before we know it, a new habit's born. Some of them are incredibly helpful. Most of them are incredibly unhelpful. So part of the work that we need to do on this self-development journey is to get in there and decode our habits, get under that bonnet of our mind and start to structure it in such a way that supports our dreams and our goals. And very often, unwanted, unhealthy habits are the first barrier that we need to break to start to brighten our world, to get that energy back, that time back, that trust in ourselves back, that actually we can make a difference to our world. Because how many times have you been so frustrated about that unwanted habit that keeps showing up, even though you promise yourself never again, and there it is again, not doing that again, and I do it again? I mean, how many habits, from food to the way that we drink to the way that our emotions fire up? It's like, why does that habit keep playing? I promised myself I'm going to stop it, yet here I am doing the very same thing again. And that's because of this fallacy. There's a fallacy that we are these perfectly rational creatures when we're not. We don't make perfectly rational choices all the time, weighing up the pros and cons. We don't. Very often, most of what we do runs at a habitual level, subconscious level, driven by the primitive part of our brain that doesn't care about your goals or your dreams. It just cares about evolutionary survival and getting your genes into the next generation. It's got its own agenda, and its agenda is rarely aligned, unless you do the work. This is where I train people all the time. It's rarely aligned with that human part of your brain that wants to be optimized and fit and healthy and do all those things that you set out to do, yet the primitive brain doesn't care. It builds a habit at a neural level, and then it just keeps up and wants to keep playing that habit. And if that means, for example, at 7 p.m. every night or thereabouts, you get a little bit hungry and you find yourself in the fridge or in the cupboard, and you're like almost on autopilot, and before you know it, you've grabbed for the chocolate or the crisps or something else unhealthy, and it's in without you really thinking. And then at some point you sort of come back and go, how did that happen again? I promised last night I wouldn't do it. And here we are. And that's just one example, right? And there's hundreds of these little habits that we carry in our lives. All right. So let's get into the solution. Let's get into the science of habit change. And it all begins with the habit loop. The habit loop basically is a loop that creates and locks in a habit. And we can decode it when we get in there. It's pretty simple. It starts with a trigger, it has a routine, and it has a reward. And then craving drives the loop effectively. So what we can do is start to decode it. We can become ninja-like in our development skills by looking at all the different elements. And here's the secret, as I said right at the start of this. See those unwanted habits? They don't need telling off, they need replacing. And what I mean by that is, the usual stance when we do something that we promised ourselves we wouldn't do is to tell ourselves off. We get the stick of guilt out and we berate ourselves and we say, how could you? You're weak, you don't have the motivation, everyone else is perfect, but you're broken. You know, only yesterday you promised yourself you weren't going to have that crisps, and here you are eating crisps. Only yesterday you said never again to another drop of alcohol, and here you are with a glass of wine in your hand. Right? We tell ourselves off. How's that going for you? Is it working? I'd say it's not working very well, because the science plays this out. The stick of guilt is not the way to make habit change. Compassion and kindness is where long-term habit change comes from. Telling yourself off just makes you run away. It makes you want to hide. It makes you want to get away from the obligations that you've set yourself. Whereas when you've got compassion and you understand that you're a perfectly imperfect human, it just buys this little bit of space to go, okay, I'm not perfect, but neither's anyone else. So let me see if I can understand how this thing works to try and make a bit of progress in my life and get to where I need to get to. And we can start that process by decoding the habit loop. So as mentioned, there's a trigger, routine, reward. The key, it's this simple, it's genius. You keep the trigger, you keep the reward, you just swap the routine. In this example, 7 p.m. is the trigger. It's a time trigger. Triggers can be time-based, they can be emotional-based, they could be preceding event-based, they could be location-based, time-based. In this example, it's time-based, right? 7 p.m, there's that sort of pang of a bit of hunger, you just sort of want to reach for something. That's the trigger, okay? Routine, into the fridge, into the cupboard, rummage around, find something that you can munch on. And very often, because of the structure that's set up, it's an unhealthy snack. Reward, a bit of a sweet burst. You know, you satisfy that bit of hunger, it just breaks the day up a bit, right? There's the reward. There's the three elements. So the key is this. Keep that trigger, 7 p.m, keep that reward, swap the routine. This is the bit where you have to do a bit of work, right? It's not that easy to do the old switcheroo. You have to do a bit of work. So there's a couple of things that you can do here to stack the deck in your favor. Firstly, remove the unhealthy snacks. Get rid of them. I'll come back to that in a second, and replace them with healthy options, right? That's where you have to do a bit of work to get in there and do a bit of switcheroo with the unhealthy snacks for healthy snacks. What you want to do is make it incredibly easy for you to do the right thing and hard to do the wrong thing. So if there are no unhealthy snacks in the fridge or in the cupboard, right, for you to get to an unhealthy snack, you'd have to jump in the car and drive to the shops. Who's doing that? Rarely ever, right? You've just made it incredibly hard to do the wrong thing, and now you've replaced them with healthy alternatives. It's now really easy to do the right thing, because when you open that cupboard or you open that fridge, ta-da, there they are, lots of healthy alternatives. So you have to do the work, right? It's not rocket science. Trust me, that one switcheroo will transform that unhealthy snacking habit into a healthy one. It's that simple. But here's the thing. This is where limiting beliefs come into our life, and they trip us up and they hold us back. Almost the instant reaction to that is, well, I can't remove the unhealthy snacks, you know, the crisps and the chocolate and the biscuits, because what about my partner? He or she, oh, they love their little biscuits. What about the kids? Oh, the kids love a little sweet treat. What about if I have a visitor? I can't give a visitor a cup of tea and a bag of nuts. I have to have chocolate in the house. I have to have biscuits in the house. What? Just pause on that for a second. These are the limiting beliefs that creep into our world, and they trip us up and hold us back, because due to those limiting beliefs, who's eating the unhealthy snacks? The visitors or you? Right? My guess is it's you. And the odd occasion, like once a blue moon, a visitor comes and you give them a biscuit. But here's the thing, let's just break down those limiting beliefs. Your kids, right, are your kids. They love little snacks. If you give them healthy snacks, they'll munch those just as quickly. And why wouldn't you want to give them healthy snacks? They're not missing out on part of their childhood. They're going to get that stuff at their, you know, the grandparents or at parties, right? Come on. Let's remove that. And your partner, so what? Talk to them. If you transform that fridge from the unhealthy to healthy snacks, they'll soon get used to it, right? And it's good for them. You know, you can sit down and have that conversation and say, this is what I'm trying to do. Come on, there's another limiting belief. And then the third one, that someone might randomly show up that you have to give a biscuit to, because if you don't give them a biscuit, then you're an awful host. Come on. Right, and here's another thing. What about flipping that thought entirely? Maybe that same person has been dreading coming to visit you, because in their mind, they're trying to optimize their diet and they're worried that they're going to show up and you're going to force biscuits down their throat. So imagine their surprise when they turn up and you give them a protein ball or something healthy, right? They might go, fantastic, I'm delighted. So these are just limiting beliefs. These type of limiting beliefs hang around in our world and they trip us up. They prevent us making proactive change because we want to fight against it. It's that primitive part of your brain saying, I like the status quo. No, Challenge everything in your life. Challenge your habits and your routines, and challenge those limiting beliefs that suddenly blossom from nowhere to stop you doing the things that you need to do. All right, so in this example, it's pretty straightforward. We just need to do the work. We've decoded the habit loop. We're going to keep the trigger. We're going to keep the reward. We're just swapping that routine. So when 7 o'clock comes around and there's that trigger, and you find yourself almost like mindlessly in the fridge or in the cupboard, now there's no unhealthy snacks. All there is that you can get your hands on are maybe some homemade protein balls. Or maybe it's like carrot or celery and hummus, whatever it is for you. Now I know on the face of it, you might go, yeah, but that's not as nice as a chocolate bar or crisps. And at the moment, that's true, because your taste buds and your psychology and your physiology adjust, and it's drawn towards those high fat, calorific type foods. So you just have to train it out of it. But you will be amazed how quickly your brain and your body adapts. It'll start to crave the carrot and celery, or it'll crave your homemade protein balls. By the way, protein balls, these type of things, are just as delicious, if not more delicious, than any bar of chocolate you'll ever get if you do them right. They are stunning, right? So let's get over that and on to the fact that you can transform your habits. So you've got your trigger, you've kept the trigger, you've now replaced it because you can't find the unhealthy stuff. All you can find is the healthy stuff. Boom. The reward is still there. That's satisfying, that nice taste, you feel a bit grown up, you've just sort of satisfied a bit of a need. Before you know it, you repeat that loop a couple of times. Boom. That unhealthy habit that has been hanging around, not for weeks, not for months, but for decades, is gone. And it was so simple. And here's the thing, now you've decoded that habit loop, if you want to get rid of that entirely, because actually you don't need that snacking habit, and actually it's not optimizing your weight and your performance or whatever it is you want for you, you can then start to decode that habit entirely. You can start to do the work to remove it because you've done the hard bit, you've taken out the unhealthy part of it, replaced it with a healthy option, and now you're free to decode the whole habit. Well, we'll talk about that on another blog. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, right? Get tactical, get ninja-like with your life, get under the bonnet of your brain and start to look at the things that are holding you back, and then do the work to decode them, destructure them, replace unhealthy routines with healthy routines, and then keep showing up and playing that loop. And before you know it, you'll have healthy habit after healthy habit after healthy habit, and your world will look a lot brighter. Enjoy it. And if you enjoy these type of blogs, don't forget, share it with your friends, and don't forget I show up every day on Facebook and Instagram live around 7:45 a.m. to cheer you on for concepts like this, a bit of motivation like this. Please share it with your friends and in groups. It really helps. And also let them know to sign up for my newsletter at www.andyramage.com. This is really important. I will be announcing some new courses that are coming up, and to get in on those courses before they sell out, it's important they're registered so that I can let you know when that course is ready and available. Thank you for spending some time with me. Enjoy.